ready for these.
I'm never ready because I'm a perfectionist, and so the only time I'm ready is after I've done it like 100 times and I know I'm doing exactly what I want.
Perfectionist. I'm like a 90% perfectionist. It's like if 90% of it's there, it's good enough.
Well,
right?
I guess I mean that you asked me if I'm ready. I don't say I'm ready until I'm like 100%, but I'll be content with 90%.
I'm like 90% right now.
Okay.
I'm like 90.
Okay, good.
Maybe like 87, 86.
Okay.
Today was a rough week. So today was a rough week. Yeah. There.
Today was a rough week. There you go.
there we go. I think it just dropped.
I will assume that you meant that on purpose.
Today's a rough week. Yeah. Chris, you're not really a human sometimes. We've been talking about this a little bit off air, but
yes. So one of Alan's goals is to make me appear to be a funnier, casual, inviting human being that you could be having a cup of coffee with. And unfortunately, my nature is so intellectual that I can't turn my brain off. In fact, somebody has told me, like, Chris, can you turn off your brain for a little while? And another friend of mine once told me, Chris, sometimes hanging around you feels like I'm doing homework.
Oh.
Yeah. But the problem is that it's kind of me, and I just kind of love it. And I love thinking. My mind's curious. And
isn't that like a passive way of telling you to shut up, basically?
That could have been, but I don't think it was necessarily.
I could have interpreted the wrong way, but I was like, oh dang, they could have just been like, hey Chris, can you stop talking? Actually, wait, what's more offensive to someone telling you that it feels like, I'm doing homework versus someone telling you to just like stop talking?
I think stop talking would hurt more.
Yeah.
Because like saying like I feel like I'm doing homework when I'm around you, it has a hint of a compliment at least.
That's true.
It's saying that you're doing something intellectual, academic, making me think, and that's generally a good thing. It's like, just shut up, just be quiet. Like that's kind of that's kind
Direct.
of rude, mean,
Yeah.
or like, well, I don't know.
It's very direct.
Yeah.
This conversation has like gone kind of dark, but to kind of flip it on the bright side, I think Chris, you have a really like awesome mind, and I think a lot of times you do think about things very deeply, and I think a lot of people don't kind of think to the level that you do. And I think the reason why I keep in touch with you is for your brain, actually. Just kidding.
I knew it. I was being objectified.
It's just your brain.
No.
I want your brain.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Alan.
Yeah, no, honestly, like I actually learned a lot from you just by observing you think about things and like process things. And I think just seeing that, the process and what you like kind of figure out things is actually really important. And it's something that I kind of tried to incorporate a little bit more into my life as well. So
That's pretty awesome to hear. And I hope that also this comes across in the podcast so that our audience also benefits from that, whatever that thing is, that process or thinking things through. Mm-hmm. And I will also compliment you and say, I hope that I can be as cool as you.
I'm cool. I didn't know that.
I don't know. I thought that all the youth at your church and stuff kind of like, oh yeah, Alan's so cool.
Oh really?
They want to be like you.
Oh cool.
I don't know. That's my perception.
Thanks, man. But I like to be smart too. But I try to be smart. Okay, cool. Hey, welcome back to Theotech podcast. As always, my name is Alan, and that guy over there who's always thinking, can't stop thinking, is
Chris.
Yeah. I'm the cool guy though, so. So today our topic is going to be on Venture Calvinist. Now, obviously, this is a wordplay off of venture capitalists, and it's something that Chris has coined and has actually written about in his blog. Is that correct?
Yeah. I wrote about a series called
And-
the Venture Calvinist Memoirs.
Shameless plug. You can find his a lot of his writings and blogs posts on Merit and Grace.
Yep.
meritandgrace.com.
meritandgrace.com.
Yeah. So you can go check out some of his writings and his deep thoughts, because a lot of his writings will make you think a lot. So you can check out his brain there. But going back to the topic, Venture Calvinists. And I think before we dive into that, let's kind of establish some context. So venture capitalists, what is that? How is that seen?
Yeah, venture capitalists, they have kind of management or stewardship for large funds of money. So Silicon Valley, of course, is famous for a lot of venture capital firms. And they often get their money from large pensions and other places like that who agree to let them steward that money for a fee. And their goal is to find quote unquote unicorns, which are companies that you can put in, maybe if you put in $1 million today, one day it'll become $1 billion. And so that's what they specialize in. Finding those companies, supporting those entrepreneurs, launching those companies and doing those deals, getting the money to the companies that need them so they can grow really fast. And that, Facebook is an example of a very well known venture funded company that succeeded. And all the big companies that we talk about from Silicon Valley today, Airbnb, Uber, and everything, that's kind of the route that they go to raise money for their company to help it to grow quickly. And so venture capitalists generally are an esteemed role, right? You have this power. People are always knocking on your door, coming to you because you have the money that they need to make their ideas real. And they're also in part responsible for a lot of the technological innovations that we enjoy today.
I see. Isn't it a bit risky though? Because with the fail rate, and I'm trying not to discourage you here, but with with the fail rate of startups, like as a venture capitalist, you have to know exactly what kind of ideas are going to explode, what kind of companies are going to.
I think I don't remember the statistics. There was some research done recently that showed that as a whole industry, the venture capitalist firm or venture capitalist industry is not particularly efficient. It's not like it's getting a ton of successes, but it's like a hit-based industry in a sense, right?
Okay.
You get those unicorns that do super well. So hit-based industries like movies, blockbuster movies, and things like that. Those are hit-based industries. Of course, Marvel seems to have kind of flipped that on its head. I don't know how they're able to make blockbuster hits every single time in their universe, but that's kind of how the venture capital world is as well. So if you're one of the top firms, then you get an amazing success rate, an amazing return on investment, and so people want to keep on giving you their money, and all the entrepreneurs come to you because they want to work with you because you're the winners. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who kind of don't make that much, in the industry as a whole.
Okay, cool. That's a little side topic on venture capitalists.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert. This is all off the top of my head. We can do more research to make a stronger case.
Yeah, for sure. But going back to the term that you coined, though, venture Calvinist. Okay, so you've kind of switched capital out and add Calvin back in. What does that mean? Can you paint a little picture on?
So I'll read the definitions that I put on the website.
Okay.
Just to give it something, some definition, and then we'll talk about it.
Some thought.
So venture Calvinist, someone compelled by the love of God to embark on risky adventures for the sake of the gospel because he or she loves others and trusts in God's sovereign grace. Someone compelled by the love of God to embark on risky adventures for the sake of the gospel because he or she loves others and trusts in God's sovereign grace. And I'll just read that first definition. There's two other ones.
Okay.
But the reason why, first, it was a fun wordplay. Calvinist, capitalist, venture capitalist. But I think that one thing that marks Calvinist theology is the sovereignty of God. That God is in such full control of all things, and he's the provider of all things, that the truth is that this should inspire those who believe in him and trust him to take risk. So I don't know, historically, it might seem like Calvinists, like people in the Presbyterian tradition or whatever like that, tend to be less risk-taking or something, kind of more conservative, traditional, not really risk-taking. But theologically speaking, if God is, this amazing creator, sustainer, redeemer of all things, then, and our Heavenly Father, it should free people up to be able to take amazing risks. They know he's going to be there for them. No. Let me tell a story.
Oh, we got a story now.
Yeah. So I got to ask Bill Gates a question.
Okay.
I got to ask him a question. He actually answered my question.
Oh, dang.
And it was at a time when Bill Gates was visiting the University of Washington, and the auditorium was packed. Everybody wanted to listen to him talk, right?
Yeah.
And when he finished his talk, I was the first one to the mic.
Nice.
To be able to ask him a question.
I'm your number one fan.
So this is what I asked him. Mr. Gates is like, oh, just call me Bill. Okay, Bill, what gave you the confidence or the courage to quit Harvard and start Microsoft? What gave you the courage to quit quit Harvard and start Microsoft?
Okay.
And the first thing he said, if I remember correctly, was like, well, if you have an idea like Microsoft, I think you should do it too. And everybody
Oh.
laughed, of course, because
Yeah.
it's so successful. But he then said, more seriously, for me, there was really no risk because my parents, they saw like, oh, this is kind of Bill's crazy idea thing. And, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We'll take him back. We'll just let him finish his degree at Harvard and, they'll move on. But if it succeeds, great.
Mm-hmm.
That was incredible to me, actually. He basically said that because his parents were his safety net, he had zero risk. And having zero risk freed him up to take this risk to start this thing called Microsoft.
So he had no, like, in his perspective, there was no loss, like, from him quitting
couldn't lose.
quitting Harvard and going to Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Because if he failed, his parents would still provide for him, and
he could still finish Harvard, and that's kind of like what his mentality was.
That's what I remember from what he told me.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that was pretty incredible, right? Because my mind abstracted to say, this is amazing. Because if somebody's in a really unstable, risky situation in life, it makes sense. They can't take more risk.
Mm-hmm.
They got to stabilize, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to get to safety. But if someone is in a risk-free setting in life, that frees them up. It unleashes them, liberates them to take many risks because they have this core that's taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me as a Christian, this is massive because I believe as a Christian that God is my father and that he is richer than Bill Gates' parents and that he is so faithful that he's promised himself to provide for everything that I need and everyone who trusts in him needs. And if that's a true thing, if that's true that he will do that, then he's basically said, kids, you have zero risk. Go. Do what I've called you to do. Take risks for the gospel. Go. I'm going to take care of everything you need. And, of course, this echoes what Jesus said. He said, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything you need will be provided for you. Matthew 6:33. So hearing it from Bill was really enlightening because this is just like a real world story right there in front of our eyes. We see his success, but the thing that was the root of it, the source of it, was that his parents provided him with that, safety net, that risk-free environment, so that he was free to take risks. And so, I share this because in some ways, Venture Calvinist as an idea, if you're a Calvinist, you believe in God's sovereignty, His goodness, then you trust that you have a Father who's that good. It should free us up to take ventures, to go on an adventure, right? To take those risks for what He cares about, what He loves, and to have fun doing it because we know that He's going to take care of us and that it's going to be worthwhile. So that even if we fail, we'll be provided for because we trust Him.
I see. And that's where the word venture comes in.
Yeah.
It's basically to take a risk.
Yep. Take a risk for the gospel.
But is it really taking a risk?
In a sense, if you have faith, it's not.
Yeah.
Because you know that everything that you're putting into it, your dad's going to take care of you.
Interesting perspective. Yeah. I think, honestly, that's really encouraging too. Because I have a big fear of failure. Just let's be honest on air. Like, I have a big fear of failure. And I think the reason why I have that is because I fear I have something to lose. And I think that kind of limits some of the things that, even though I have some crazy ideas, like, it kind of limits that. And I have to, like, quote unquote, come back to reality and be like, well, I really can't do that. That dream's a little too unfeasible. So, so did you have any, I mean, obviously you had the dream of Theotech, and it's interesting because you had to give that dream away when you left UW. And then again, when you got into Amazon, you had to give away the life of comfort to pursue that dream again, which is Theotech, right?
Yep.
And as you're talking about, Venture Calvinists, I kind of thought about, your adventure, right, going into Amazon, leaving Amazon. Do you want to talk about that a little more? Or?
I can talk a little bit about that, sure.
Yeah.
So I went to the University of Washington in Seattle, and I did my degree in computer science. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work with a professor in the EE department and the CS department in machine translation, which is using computers to translate human languages. And I wanted to start a company with the things that we were working on. I had an idea called BeSpeak, build an app that kind of like Google Translate lets you speak freely and it'll subtitle what you say on the phone in real time, and you can communicate with people in their language that way. And so I was doing my undergrad in machine translation research, and I did a master's program that also had machine translation as its kind of central focus. But as I approached the end of my degree, after I'd already told my professor that I wanted to start a company, he told me, like, Chris, this is going to cost a lot more to commercialize, and we're not even sure about the commercial viability, basically, of this idea. So you should also look for a job. And I was just kind of crushed, basically.
Yeah.
I went to the recruiting fair. I submitted my resume, and the moment that the resume left my hand, the hands of the first recruiter, my heart just sank. I was just like, wow.
It's just so interesting and so like contrary, because I think a lot of people out of college are so eager to grab up a job and get, quote unquote, signed to a company, right?
Well, you're right.
Which is
I messed up. And like
I didn't say that.
During the whole 3 months after I graduated, I was getting job offers, and I knew I should be grateful to God, but I was not at all. I was just kind of bitter and angry. And my parents would rejoice and like, oh, awesome, Chris, you got an interview, you got a job offer, awesome. But I wasn't happy. And it wasn't until one day my dad had figured me out. And he sat me down and said, Chris, I think I get it now. This idea that you had to start this company, it was like your baby, and your baby died. And so even though we're all rejoicing that you're getting these jobs and things like that, you're still mourning. You're still grieving over the death of your dream.
Yeah.
And his words were like a healing balm, basically, because I didn't get it myself. I was frustrated with myself, and I knew I shouldn't be angry at God, but I was just kind of ungrateful. And what he said made a lot of sense, and it enabled me to just kind of mourn what I dreamed of doing didn't happen, and accept it. And then my ambition changed. My ambition became, at that time I had an offer from Amazon, and I thought that's what God wanted me to do. So I said, Lord, I just want to serve you faithfully at Amazon as long as you want me there. That's my ambition. And I'm not going to hold on to this other dream thing either. I don't want to have my feet in two boats. That's going to be my goal, just to serve you faithfully at Amazon for as long as you want me there.
Does it, this is a question that I've always been wondering, does it make you really confused when, I'm assuming this kind of idea, which is now Theotech and which is now what you're doing, but at the time when you were leaving UW, and did you believe this? Okay, so first question was, did you believe that this dream or this idea was kind of divinely inspired, or like, did you believe like that's something that God planted in you? Like how?
Well, again, because I believe in God's sovereignty, yes, of course, He's in control over all these things. But in a deeper, more personal level, yes, because what was my motive for doing machine translation? It was actually the gospel, because I was lazy. Okay, this is how I got into machine translation. I was really lazy, and I didn't have an internship my sophomore year. I hadn't applied, and the deadlines had passed, and my mom had told me, like, you should have looked for an internship so you could work this summer. I missed that deadline, and at my church, these Wycliffe Bible translator missionaries had visited to share about their work. And that was the first time I ever heard about Bible translation. Prior to that, I really didn't care anything about language, to be honest. Like, I could speak a little bit of Indonesian, a little bit of Japanese, and then English. And for me, I just felt like, well, everybody can just learn English if they want to get the knowledge. I was pretty naive, but language was my passion. But because I had experienced God's grace and the gospel, I cared about that. And then to hear about the language translation work that was necessary to get the gospel to people, it made me care about language. And so when 2 weeks after those missionaries came to my church, I got an email out of the blue from a professor in the E department who was looking for an undergrad researcher to do research in machine translation. So I put two and two together. I was like, this sounds cool. Like, maybe this could help accelerate the translation of the Bible. So I applied. I told her even why I wanted to do it. And, thank God and thank her, this professor said, yeah, I'll hire you. And so I became an undergraduate researcher in machine translation, statistical machine translation. And I have to say that it was a lot of fun, but also really hard, because I had to read all these technical papers that I just felt so insecure, because I didn't know anything. Like, it was like foreign language, even though it was in English. But I learned so much through that process, and eventually I got to the point where I can read papers now, and I'm so glad that I can. It's awesome. So I did. That's how I got into machine translation. It was really, it's like, God, I want to be able to use this skill and hopefully apply it to help get the gospel into every language for every person.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what motivated me to get into this whole field. So the desire to start the company, I mean, everyone has mixed motives. Part of it's like, yeah, my own fame, vainglory, whatever like that. But aside from that, it was also partly motivated by this desire to help to, overcome the language barrier and help enable people to share the gospel with people who don't speak their language, in addition to the other practical applications. So it felt divinely inspired in that sense, and I prayed about it a ton, a lot. I prayed about because that was the desire of my heart, even as I was kind of wrapping up my degree.
Yeah. So this is the question that I have for you though is, isn't it really confusing though? Because I would be really confused if, I felt really compelled or really strong about, like a certain idea or vision, and even more so if I felt like that was like divinely inspired, or like that's something that God really communicated with me, and then to go from that to where God says, "Oh, but you can't do it right now."
Well, yeah, I was definitely. I wouldn't even say confused. I was disappointed.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, you could have started Theotech back then. Like,
well, it wouldn't have been Theotech.
It wouldn't have been Theotech, but you could have started something, right? You could start a company back then. But you were talking about like, you were looking at your dead baby, but I would take it one step further and say, like, by joining Amazon, you basically had to shoot your child in the head.
Wow, that's pretty graphic.
Sorry about that. Sorry, all your younger viewers, listeners out there.
No, but here's the thing. What you just said is completely valid in a sense, right? That it's not just me saying that it's already dead. It's me actively saying, and I'm not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, you had to get.
And
that.
I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to change my focus to just serve God faithfully at Amazon for as long as He wants me there.
Right.
That was absolutely what my choice had to be, by God's grace, but my choice.
Right.
And but here's the thing. You want to know what actually came to my mind in those times as I realized that this was like a dead baby, a dream, right? It was the story of Abraham, because he believed that God could raise his son Isaac from the dead to fulfill what God promised. And so for me, it's like, God, if you want to raise this from the dead, you can. And you're the one who's going to have to do it, because I don't have that power.
Yeah, true.
But I trust you to do it. If, I'm going to treat this as dead. I'm not going to even try to keep it alive anymore. I'm just going to make my ambition to serve you faithfully at Amazon as long as you want me there. And if you want to bring it back, you can, because you have the power to raise the dead.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that was the way that what my dad shared with me was helpful for me in light of Scripture, to be able to accept that and to still trust Him and to move into what He was calling me to do, because that's exactly the story of Abraham. Mm-hmm. That Abraham was commanded to sacrifice, kill his son, who was promised to him by God to be the way that he would have many descendants.
Oh, okay.
And he was about to do it until God stopped him at the very last minute. And the reason why, in Hebrews it says the reason why he was able to do that was because he believed that God is able to raise the dead, so that even if his son was killed, God was going to raise his son from the dead so that he could have descendants through that son that God promised. And that was faith.
Yeah.
So for me, by analogy, same thing. If God promises to me, He's able to raise the dead. It's dead now.
Yeah. Or it was.
It was dead, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking in the present of that time.
Present, yeah, for sure.
So,
wow, actually, yeah. I didn't actually realize how similar your story actually is with Abraham. Obviously, it's not with the child, but it kind of is a child. A child.
Analogous.
Yeah, analogous.
Yeah.
Would you say your experience in that was kind of a venture Calvinist? Because you did have to, risk your idea, risk your dream, and go into Amazon, right?
But I didn't have that concept yet.
Okay.
Really, of this kind of venture Calvinism theology or whatever. I didn't really have that in my mind back then. I believed in God's sovereignty back then. God had done some things in my college life that really shaped my life significantly. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the biggest comforts, right? Is that God is all powerful, and that He's in full control of all things to bring about what He desires. And that was almost like where theology is tested in the realities of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. But I hadn't thought through a venture Calvinist yet, really, as like a concept.
Okay.
Where, connecting the dots together and say, this is more than just my personal life. This is God's invitation for every believer who has Him as their Father, who promises that He's going to take care of them, to begin to take risks for the gospel, to take risks for the things that He wants to see in the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So when did the idea of venture Calvinist start to like form in your head, and when did you actually like coin that term and begin to like think and write about that? Like,
I don't have the date on my blog post, unfortunately. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's a God thing actually, where just kind of the concept came into my mind. Nice. Frankly, it sounded cool. It's like, I should use this for something. But definitely, it began to be something I wanted to share around the time when I was preparing to start Theotech. or preparing to leave Amazon and that kind of thing. This was going to be the way that I could share my story and put it into a bigger framework. Because at the end of the day, I think that, my story is a testimony for others about God's faithfulness, His grace, His glory, as in the midst of the struggles. And we could talk about that more, and the doubts and all those sort of things. But I realized that this story is really meant to be able to invite people to trust God, to follow Him in His call for their lives, to use the gifts He's given them to advance the gospel. And so that's why I love Venture Calvinist as a term, as a brand, or as a bigger thing, is because it's not just about me. I'm one example. I'm like one of these kinds of people, but I want to be able to share my story so that people can see that God is actually faithful, and that if He calls them to something, He will provide, and that that just takes their risk down to zero, so they don't have to be afraid, and they can do it. And that's why I even wrote my blogs as I did, because I didn't want to just kind of reflect back if God grants success to Theotech and things like that, and just like make it just look really shiny and polished. I wanted to have blog posts that were written in the midst of how difficult it was as I was going through all those things. Because then they were going to be within that context. They would make sense within that kind of stage instead of kind of glossed over. And that's why I wanted to write the blog post as I went, was so I could chronicle it as it was happening. But that's where the term came from, is like as I was about to venture out into starting Theotech and leaving Amazon, and I didn't get to talk really about that story yet. I that was the term that came to my mind about how I wanted to describe what I was doing for a broader audience, like Memoirs of a Venture Calvinist.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more or less kind of documenting your journey.
Yeah, they're like memoirs, right? Like
Yeah.
like a journal or whatever like that. But the term Venture Calvinist is kind of catchy, or I thought it was. So
I like it.
It was fitting, and also it's also very explicit about my theology too. Like I'm not trying to like impose it or whatever, but it is the basis. Like because I believe these things about God, right? That's what drives me to do what I do. I want to make it so clear. Like they fit. They go hand in glove kind of thing, right?
Right.
So.
Okay. Cool. Do you believe that everybody should be a Venture Calvinist?
Whew. That's a hard question, my friend.
I just thought of this one, so I apologize.
So here's my attitude towards that. If God calls them, yes, I want them to have that immense faith in God to go ahead and step out and do it. If God calls them to, if he calls them to a life that seems like it's not as adventurous, quote unquote, if He calls them to that, they should do it. And Paul even says this to the churches in Corinthians, I think 1 Corinthians 7 or something. He says, like, each person should live according to what God has called them to. So if you're a slave, don't worry about it. You can still be a Christ follower. He's your true master. And you don't have to be a free man to be a Christ follower. You can still be a slave. But if you can be free, take it. Right? That's what he teaches. So I think that everyone should do what God has called them to do. Now, I think that if you look at the whole of Jesus' teaching, even if you're in a really comfortable job or whatever like that, He's still calling you to sacrifice for the kingdom. He still is. It may not look like leaving your job to be able to start a company or something, but it may look like something like where you're giving away a lot of your money and your time or something, I don't know, in order to serve others and to serve the poor and to activate other believers to use their gifts for the gospel. And that's as much of a venture as leaving your job to start a company. And it's going to require sacrifice, but you do it because you're compelled by God's love and because you know He's going to take care of you, and the reward that He promised you is great, and your passion for the gospel will drive you to be taking these risks that won't make sense to other people. Maybe other people will see that and be like, why are you doing that? Just stuff your 401k.
Yeah.
Right? Or like just buy another house or something else like that, or like just have fun, travel, see the world. And none of those things are intrinsically bad, but as a follower of Jesus, if He calls you and commands you, and at the end of the day, I'm going to take one step back now.
Sure.
If you really believe that God is sovereign over everything, right, then you have to accept that everything that you have, every amazing benefit, blessing that you have is a gift from God. Your intelligence, your hard work, your wealth, your motivation to even do the work, your health, everything that you have is a gift from God. He gave it to you. You didn't earn it. You don't deserve it. And you continue to have it only because of His grace, because of His generosity towards you. If that's true, then it begs the question, what is it for? What did God make you smart for? What did God make you beautiful for? What did God make you wealthy for? Why did God choose to have you be born in the States or somewhere else or whatever? Why did God give you a college education? What is it all for?
Mm-hmm.
And then you begin to realize, like, everything is grace. What is it for? It's to do his will.
Yeah.
It's for him. And as a steward of what he's given you, you're going to then be thinking like a venture Calvinist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how can I maximize the use of everything God gave me to fulfill what he wants in the world?
Yeah.
And I think that is going to apply for everyone. Not everybody has to quit their job to start a company,
Right.
or become a missionary or something else. But to think through, what does God want to do with the gifts that he's given to you? And how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
That is valid for everyone.
I think the term venture Calvinist is actually really appropriate in this regards because, again, I don't know much about venture capitalists or capitalism, but I'm assuming those with the money, like with the power, gets to decide how to distribute that wealth, right? And I think the same way, like when you're talking about, you know, some of us have degrees, some of us have, you know, good looks, some of us have money or wealth, or, you know, family. And I think, you know, that begs the question, how do we use it? Why did God give us this, right? And it's great. Yeah, and again, like going back to, you know, what you're saying, because some people are called to do, you know, startups. Some people are not called to do it, right? And it's depending on what God has given you in the first place, right? So that we don't complain about, you know, other people or look down on people who don't have what we have. But at the same time, still ask that question of how do we maximize what we have?
Yeah, and you know when I was younger, in middle school, high school stuff, I was an achiever. My identity was based on achieving things. Like that's how I thought I was great and everything. Everything was for me though, right? And I also struggled with like being humble versus being prideful, right? Because like if you're like self-deprecating, like, no, I'm not that awesome at this thing, like, like math or violin or who knows what, right? It's not completely true, right? Because you're actually good at it maybe. At the same time, you don't want to brag about it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the best, like Muhammad Ali or whatever like that, right? Like, number one. As a Christian, you don't want to do that because you think it's explicitly wrong.
Sure.
You know, bragging and all that stuff. But this is what I realized is that, no, humility would be this. Humility would be acknowledging that everything I have is grace. Everything I have is a gift from God. I did not deserve one bit of this. And I can acknowledge it. Like, if I'm smart, God gave me this gift of smartness. He could take it away, but he's given it to me. And then the question no longer becomes about how do I show other people how smart I am. It's not about how do I show people how great I am or how good I am. It just flips completely. And it's like, everything's a gift. So what did God want to give this to me for?
Yeah.
And how do I use this intelligence, this wealth or whatever to serve others, to serve those who don't have it, and to serve the interests of the one who entrusted it to me, which is God? How do I serve his interests with this intelligence, with this wealth, with this achievement? And that changes the whole game because now it's not even thinking about you anymore. I think C.S. Lewis said that humility in many ways is about not even thinking about yourself. And so you have your merits. You have what you're good at. This is why my blog is called Merit and Grace. You have what you're good at. And you know it's a gift. You acknowledge that. And now you're thinking about what do I do with this to serve others, to serve those who don't have it. That's what it's for. And the strongest example we have of this is Jesus Christ. He's exalted above all. He has all power, wisdom, strength, honor. And what does he do with all of that? He humbles himself. He empties himself of all of it in order to serve and love and do good to us and to lift us up so that we can share with him in his glory. And so that's our model for a venture Calvinist. That's what it is. That's what all of our merits are for.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely feel like I'm much more motivated when I realize that I'm given something that I don't deserve. Like if someone dropped like $2 million on me, you know, to like build a music studio or something like that.
I would buy a Lamborghini.
Buy a Lamborghini. I would like if I had a business model idea or like, you know, some sort of, you know, like business plan and someone actually like funded that.
Yeah.
Like even my album, like for example, I only got like $2,000 for it, right?
Yeah.
On a Kickstarter, but like I worked so hard to like get that thing out, and I think like I realized that was like people graciously gave for that, you know, and I think, you know, same thing if, you know, an investor came and like dropped like, you know, a couple $1 million on Theotech, Chris, I bet you'd be working like around the clock. Well, maybe not around the clock, but I think it would be like a great.
It's a great honor and it's motivating for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, just kind of taking that and then just broadening that out into larger perspective, how much more, you know, like when God gives us grace and God gives us all these like cool gifts along with that, like and we realize that we don't deserve any of that, how much more motivating is that? So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's good. There's two more definitions for venture Calvinists,
Mhm.
and are they like silly definitions? Are they?
The last one is silly.
Okay.
The last one was a silly pun on venture capitalism, which allocates money to high risk, high reward opportunities, frequently in the technology industry.
Okay.
So it's just basically
It's
just,
a pun,
It's just
yeah.
calling it a pun.
It's a pun.
But that is what venture capitalism does, right? It allocates money to high risk, high reward opportunities.
That's true.
Oftentimes it's in tech, because tech is where you have leverage, where you can put in a little bit and get a lot out of it through innovation and disruption.
Right.
So that was the third definition. The second one was a speculator. A venture Calvinist is a speculator who makes themselves and all they possess available for innovative projects that magnify the supreme worth of Christ and bless the world at large because they trust in God's sovereign grace. That's a definition, so I'll read it one more time. A venture Calvinist is a speculator who makes themselves and all they possess available for innovative projects that magnify the supreme worth of Christ and bless the world at large because they trust in God's sovereign grace. And I'll unpack it a little bit. Sorry, this is so technical or analytical.
We might actually have to unpack that in the next episode.
Oh, very well.
Yeah, we're coming to a close.
Why did you give me this question at the very end?
Because we want our audience to come back next week. Shh, don't tell them.
That's the secret.
Don't tell our audience that we
Cliffhangers.
want
Okay.
our
I won't tell
master
anyone.
plan.
It's all good.
Okay, good. That is. I think we're gonna have to split this into 2 parts, if not 3 parts, on venture.
Well, I had a great time talking about the first part.
Yeah,
today
for
with you,
sure.
Alan.
Yeah. And again, Chris has 4 blog posts on Venture Calvinists. So if you actually want to look those up and kind of read up on his thoughts ahead of time, you can definitely do so on his blog, meritandgrace.com. Chris, any last words?
Last words. I thought we're gonna have those next time.
Are we?
Yeah. Well, I'm really happy to be able to share this.
Yeah, for sure.
With the audience, with you, Alan, because it's my joy. I'll be honest, man. Like, anytime that I'm inspired to trust God and to trust Him for amazing big things, to take risks and stuff, and anytime other people are inspired to do that, my joy is just like multiplied.
Yeah.
Because for me, this is so exciting because this is actually walking by faith. And if I can't walk by faith, if I can't trust God's promises and do these things, then what's the point? Like, there's really, I'm sorry to put it this way, but I feel like there's really no point in being a Christian and like doing all these other things unless I can trust God all the way and see Him come through all the way.
Yeah.
There's no point in playing the safe, comfortable, quote unquote Christian life. Like, it's not that fun. I could spend my time doing a lot of other things that would be a lot more worthwhile.
Yeah.
But to walk by faith, to do that where you're sacrificing, it looks like a sacrifice to the world. For you, it's an investment because you believe that God's promise is going to be fulfilled.
For sure. Yeah.
And then to go through the struggles of it makes you feel like every time you read the Bible, you're like, well, that makes a lot of sense because you're not even having to apply it, quote unquote, to your life. It's just like, well, that character had to walk by faith, and I'm going through something very much like that right now, and it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, when you see God's comfort in the middle of the trials, and then when you see God's grace do the miraculous, the impossible, that's what makes it so joyful. And at the end of the day, that's what I hope that people experience, right? The joy of knowing the Lord and knowing that He's God and that He's faithful and that He fulfills everything that He says, and that banking on Him, hoping in Him is the best thing that anyone could ever do.
Yeah. And just kind of to tack on something at the end, word of encouragement for you, Chris, is just kind of seeing your progression as a venture Calvinist, as we were talking about, is actually really inspiring. And I think, obviously, you said that it doesn't feel like a sacrifice for you. It feels like an investment for you.
Well, the mindset is that way.
Mindset,
It can still feel like a sacrifice without any return sometimes.
Right, but I think it's also inspired kind of me to realize, certain areas where I do need to sacrifice and I do need to, do need to invest. And, if there's any area that I'm not, and even though I have confirmation from God, like I do want to take that time to like think about it, and I think like one of the big things for me is fear, right? But obviously we'll get into that in another episode, but it's really inspiring, and I hope that it actually inspires you guys to go out and do what you're really passionate about and to really just be activated in the
Yep.
world.
And what God called you to do, what he gifted you to do.
Yeah.
Connect those dots, and that's where joy is found.
Yeah, because you guys got a lot of stuff and talent, and we're excited to see where that goes. So, all right. Once again, my name's Alan. That guy over there is Chris. And
Let's bring this episode to a close.
okay, bye.
See ya.